What is happening, guys? Cotty Plays here, bringing you another Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel video. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing another tier list. I feel like I just did one of these like a week and a half ago, but the meta is already different. We got a new ban list today. For those of you who don't know, I uploaded a ban list reaction video earlier today. This is the ban list. Jumping over here to Master Duel meta really quickly. Got Birdman to 3. Thunder Dragon Roar to 3, Harpoor to 3, a few Runick cards to 2, Fusion Destiny to 2, and Amato and Wado to 1. So if you guys haven't checked that out, go look at the video, go look at the Master Duel meta website, look at the updates, so on and so forth. But the meta I don't think is going to be all that different from where it was in my previous tier list video. But we also have about a week and a half under our belt with the new Sprite format, and with this new ban list, I thought it'd be a fine time to go ahead and make a new tier list. So without further ado, let's jump right on in. We got 6 categories this time instead of 5. I normally do 5, but I think based on this past week's results, I think 6 is probably a fair option to go with. So we got tier 0 question mark, because maybe, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 rogue, and crafting materials, because yeah, don't play these decks. So let's jump right on in with ABC. So this is ABC Therion. Previously I put this deck at tier 3. This is top of rogue, bottom of tier 3. For the sake of the fact that I think this deck going first is still incredibly powerful, I think it's got to be respected at tier 3. Going second, this deck is probably just a crafting material deck. To be honest with you, it's not very relevant going second at all. But going first, having the ability to establish a buster, having the ability to establish, potential Omni negate. No, you can't even do that anymore with that Unique Carrier, can you? Anyways, I digress. There's still a lot of things this deck can do. There's a lot of things this deck can set up. This deck can set up multiple disruptions in the form of IP, in the form of potentially Cyber Dragon Infinity with the Buster Dragon, so on and so forth, and the Therion cards, the Adventure cards. There's a lot of great potential here, but going second, the deck falls flat on its face, so I don't think it can ever be above tier 3, top of rogue. The next deck is Pure Adamancipator. I didn't have this on the tier list last time. I just had Adamancipator Sprite on the tier list, but I think these two decks need to be separated. And honestly, I'm going to put this right here above ABC, but not much higher, because it has a lot of the same problems as ABC. I think it's still an incredibly strong going first deck. I don't think it's going to be a very relevant going second deck. Also, decks like this get significantly weaker with Sprite in the meta, because both combo decks in general lose to Runick, combo decks in general lose to Max C, and it's searchable. So I think that's a big thing in this current format, why these combo decks might not be as powerful as they previously were. The next deck I want to talk about is Adamancipator Sprite. So this is a deck. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to Master Duel meta one more time and just look at the meta breakdown. These are the tournaments for the past 2 weeks. What's been winning, what's been doing decently in tournaments. You can also see the decks that are tiered here, so on and so forth. You see Runick Sprite, Pure Sprite, Tri-Brigade Sprite, Live Twin Sprite. There's a lot of Sprite here, but there's no Adamancipator Sprite. This deck has not seen any representation at all. And for those of you who don't know, why I'm saying this is a real deck, I hope I spelled that right on my first try. I did, but it's not loading, so that sucks. Anyways, if you scroll through these Adamancipator cards, Researcher's a level 2, Seeker's a level 2. I think that's the only one, right? Yeah. So your two of your main 3 Adamancipator. The other one is Analyzer, but it's level 4. 2 of your main 3 Adamancipator cards. I'm so sorry. You guys can't see this. Whatever. But anyways, 2 of your 3 Adamancipator monsters in your main deck are level 2 monsters. So there's just inherent synergy there with the Sprite cards, especially Elf. Right? So there's just this synergy that does exist with the 2 archetypes. Let's look at Adamancipator. I guess there's no Adamancipators that topped. So there's Adamantipator. You can look at these. I would be shocked if they weren't playing. Dang, this is really bad. All the fact that none of this stuff is loading. Okay, it doesn't look like this deck is playing Alpha at all. Anyways, I'm gonna stop looking at this because it's just not. It's like an uphill battle trying to get it to load. But there's synergy there. There is definitely synergy between the two archetypes. Elf is a really good card in this deck. The Sprite engine in general is just really good because it can get you a free disruption. You don't need a big Sprite package, right? You could theoretically just play like a few, maybe not starter. I don't know. It's because it's difficult to play starter in this deck because it locks you to level 2s. It's also difficult to play gigantic in this deck for the same reason. But if you just play like a small Sprite package, maybe like 3 blues, a jet, and smashers, you can easily just establish like a free interruption for almost like nothing, and it's just got like just inherent synergy with the deck. But despite that, I'm going to put this around the same level as Pure Adamantipator because it's not proven. You might even like be able to make the argument that it's like worse than Pure Adamantipator because like literally no one's playing it. But I think the upside to this deck, the ceiling of a deck like this, is a little bit higher than like the ceiling of just a Pure Adamantipator because the Sprite cards are just so powerful and they're just so good overall. But again, only time will tell with something like this. So the next deck is Adventure Phantom Knights. It's going to be the first tier 2 deck. I think this is definitely a tier 2 deck. Just got a buff on the previous ban list. Okay, now you can also say like you could lump in like any Phantom Knight variation here. So Adventure Phantom Knights, Pure Phantom Knights, Burning Abyss Phantom Knights. All those different variations I'm going to say are around the same level. And all of these decks got a buff with Fusion Destiny going to 2. So I think they're going to maintain their spot at tier 2 and potentially the only place to go is up, really. But I don't really see that happening from 1 Fusion Destiny because it doesn't really change that much. Because Verite is just such a free card anyways. The next deck I want to talk about is Virtual World. And where do I put Virtual World? I would say it's probably overall a better deck than ABC. I think last time I put these like in reverse order, but I think this is honestly Virtual World is probably a better deck because it has the ability to play around floodgates so easily. And for better or worse, floodgates are a really, really big part of this game still. And I think this deck can play better going second than ABC can. I think it can play really, really good going first. It's also got access. It just has access to a lot of different like versatile options. That makes it a constant threat in the metagame, and it's a deck that you always have to know how to play against because you never know when you're going to play against it. So for those reasons, I think it's probably slightly better than ABC, but probably worse than some of these other combo decks. It also doesn't get like hurt as bad. I'm going to say as bad by the Runick banishing because cards like Shin and Nanian, Nanian and Chuchi can like shuffle back your banished cards. So it does have like some like long-term like stability against the Runick matchup that some of these other decks don't have. Right. The next deck is not Adamantipator, Ignister. I think this deck is probably I put it tier 2 last time, but I'm gonna drop this down to tier 3. The reason being is because Sprite, this deck does not play into a Sprite board. Well, okay, no, Sprite plays into this deck's inboard very, very well. Having an Arrival and nothing else doesn't do anything to Sprite really, because Sprite has the ability to play a card like Pixies, which can out this. It has the ability to play a card like Avermax, which can out this, so on and so forth, right? And it just, this deck, Sprite has in-engine outs to the boss monster here, and as we'll talk about in a little bit, Sprite is clearly the best deck in the game. Like, there's 2 variations that are clearly the best deck in the game, and everything else is just a part of Master Duel. But it's Sprite in Runick Sprite's world, and everyone else is just living in it, right? Really? So like all these other decks have to stack up to that, and I don't think Ignister does a very good job of that. I think I gave this deck a lot more credit in the previous tier list than I should have been. And I think if you're going to see in a cyber strategy from here on out, it's going to have to be Mathmech or potentially Salad. But not Ignister. Granted, against all the other decks, like Ignister's great. But when you're playing a tournament and you play, it's like, let's say you play a 7-round tournament and 6 of those rounds are Sprite matchups, like what are you trying to accomplish here with a deck like this, right? So that's my logic there. And I think I was probably a little bit wrong last time. The next deck is Branded Despia. I think Despia is probably a little bit better than Phantom Knights, but not by like a lot. You know, maybe like by just a little bit. And that's because this deck just it plays really well into like the Sprite matchup, honestly. Dragostapelia is a very good card against Sprite. Mirror Jade is also a very good card against Sprite. So is Guardian Chimera. Like all these cards that give you the ability to remove your opponent's monster just on a whim, or alter their levels, is really, really powerful. Also, Super Poly is an amazing card. Branded Despia is still one of the best decks at breaking boards, going second. Overall, it's like a pretty solid matchup. It can get difficult when like you're going second into a Sprite board and they're able to establish like a carrot, smashers, like multiple different levels of disruption. It can get a little difficult. Maybe an IP, something like that. But most of the time, like Sprite boards are going for Avermax with IP. And Avermax doesn't do anything in the Despia matchup. It's just like a free just banish off Mirror Jade. Like Mirror Jade just eats Avermax for breakfast, right? So Despia is very, very good. I think it might be the best non-Sprite variant, the best non-Sprite deck in the game. But that might be a bold take because I think there's another contender. But we'll get to that in a little bit. The next deck is Eldlich. I mean, for better or worse, like right now, Eldlich is like crafting materials. I'm not going to leave it here because I think it's better than that. I think it's Rogue. But for better or worse, it is crafting materials because Runick, despite this, I'm air quoting here, ban list, whatever this is, Eldlich still loses to Runick like super hard. Runick just completely obliterates the Eldlich matchup. Because of cards because of all the Runick spells banishing, because being able to play under floodgates, being able to have cards in the main deck, in-engine cards like Destruction, that can just pop Eldlich's floodgates that do get kind of pesky sometimes. Having the ability to just play like so many versatile options in a deck like Runick makes a deck like Eldlich completely unviable. And it's kind of sad. Like I played against a floodgate Eldlich deck in a tournament against Runick Sprite. I was playing Runick Sprite and they were playing Eldlich, and it wasn't even close. He won a game, but the only reason he won a game is because he opened 4 floodgates and one of them was Imperial Iron Wall. And I was like, all right, GG, bro, you got it. But I still almost won that game. Like he had to have he opened like 3 floodgates or something like that. He opened like 4 back row. That's what he was. He opened 4 back row to start the game. 3 of them were floodgates, and 1 of them was a Solemn Judgment. That's the only reason he won the game, was because he had the Imperial Iron Wall plus the Solemn Judgment to protect it. And if that's your winning strategy, like no matter what deck you are, you might win a game here or there, might win a match here or there, but you're not going to be winning long term. So you can't really put the deck like that anything higher than I think Rogue. I think maybe you could make the argument that it's tier 3, but I don't think it has the versatility or flexibility of any of the decks in this above category. So we will see with time. Thunder Dragon, Branded Thunder Dragon, whatever you want to call it. It did get a slight buff with Roar going to 3. Personally, I don't think it's going to change very much with how this deck performs. However, I think I underestimated this deck in the previous tier list. So I had this at the bottom of tier 3. It was literally the worst tier 3 deck in my opinion on my last tier list. I disagree with that sentiment. Now, I think I was wrong. I think this is probably one of the best tier 3 decks. Not because of the buff, but because I was wrong. And I was wrong in the sense that, I underestimated the power of Colossus playing into Runick, playing into Sprite in general, just going as a going first card. I also underestimated the fact that Runick banishes your opponent's cards, and it can trigger your Thunder Dragons. And I knew that, obviously, because I literally played Thunder Dragon in the Duelist Cup, a few months ago. Back in December, I played Thunder Dragons for a lot of that event because of Runick. This deck also has the ability to main deck Shifter, which is really, really good against Runick, so on and so forth. So I think, for whatever reason, I was just underestimating this, and I don't remember my reasoning exactly, but I think I was wrong. So now this is going to be much higher on the Tier 3 list. I think it might be the first or second best Tier 3 deck in the game, but we'll see. Triple D, I heard someone saying that DDD was really good into Sprite, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, maybe this deck is better this format because no one's playing Nibiru, and this deck sucks versus Nibiru. But then I also started thinking, wait, this deck also sucks versus Maxi, and just sucks in general, so it's not good. So it's still Rogue. No, I'm just kidding, guys. In all seriousness, this deck, it doesn't suck, but it's not very good either. It does a lot to do a little. I don't know. It's hard to rank a deck like this because I love DDD. I think this is one of the coolest archetypes ever. I just don't think it's very good. And I've never seen anyone be able to convince me of that argument through actual gameplay. People talk about theory with this deck all the time, and that's great, but it doesn't actually do anything in the moment. So until I see something else out of this deck, I'm still going to put it at this Rogue level. I don't think it's worthy of dismantling because I think it's a really cool deck. But other than that, I don't really think it's got too much going for it. And, Searchable Maxi just wrecks decks like this. Anyways, moving on to the next deck, Dinomorphia. I think Dinomorphia is better than Eldlich, I'll say that. I don't know if it's it's not tier 3. I don't know why I put it there. It's not tier 3. This is a Rogue deck. It's better than Eldlich, I think. It's a decent Floodgate deck, but it's just not the best Floodgate deck. I don't really know why you'd ever choose to play Dinomorphia over Labyrinth, over Runick Stun, despite the hits. It doesn't really seem like a viable strategy compared to those other ones because it's so reliant on so many different pieces. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you don't open the main... I hope I'm spelling this right. I hope the stupid Master Duel also loads. It doesn't look like it's going to. Where is it at? Right here. So, Theresa, I feel like if you don't open this card, or one of your really powerful trap cards, maybe this or something. I don't really know this deck all that well. I don't know all I know is a bunch of these things fusion summon and just put out these guys and actually don't really do all that much. But I feel like if you don't open really strong engine in a deck like this, you just instantly lose. And I also feel like if you go second, you just instantly lose. But I don't know. That's just me. Whereas with Labyrinth, I feel like you can go second in that deck and still do something. But I'm rambling enough way too much about a bad deck. Moving on to the next thing, Dinos. I put Dinos at tier 3 last time, and I'm sticking by it. I think Dinos are underrated. I don't think people are giving this deck the credit it deserves. I think it plays very, very well into the Sprite matchup. Now, I don't know if it plays great into Runick. I'll say that. Because banishing your combo pieces in this deck, which needs so many combo pieces, especially combo pieces in the deck, it's a little sketchy. But I do think this deck can just crack Runick Sprite boards like an egg, and just eat them for breakfast. So, for that reason, I think it's a really, really good option. The thing is, if you can't play going second into Runick Sprite or Sprite, you're a dead deck this format. There's no reason to play that deck. And if you can't play through Runick power spells going first, if you go first, set up a board and your board can't withstand the Runick spells, your deck's bad, right? I think that's the problem with decks like Thunder Dragon and Dinos, is they have the ability to potentially play around and play through Runick cards and play through Sprite cards, but it's so subjective to the specific hand. It's so relying on the specific hand. With Thunder Dragons, Yeah, Colossus is great, but if your opponent opens Freezing Curses or Tip to get to Freezing Curses, it just... Oh, no, Tip doesn't work. I'm sorry. If they open Freezing Curses, it just doesn't work. Right? Granted, the card's now semi-limited, so there's that, but, like, whatever. I digress. Those are reasons why I don't think these decks can really be, like, higher than this, because they don't seem to consistently be able to play through Runick boards, Sprite boards, or go first against those matchups. Whereas something like Despia, I think can. And I think Despia can consistently compete. Anyways, the next deck is Dragon Link. So, you guys all know, at least most of you probably know, this is my baby. I love Dragon Link. This is my favorite deck in Master Duel. One of my favorite decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! But it is sadly not very good right now. I've been testing a lot with one of my good friends and teammate, who is like a big Dragon Link player. He's probably better with Dragon Link than I am. Maybe it's Destiny. Shout out to him. I don't know if he's ever going to see this, but we've been testing a lot, decent amount, since Runick Sprite came out and Sprite came out. And he's been trying to get dragons to work. And it just is an uphill battle for him. He's struggling, and like we as a team are struggling to, decide on a good list for Dragon Link. It just doesn't seem like it's out there right now. Maybe this ban list hitting some Runick cards will help, but I don't really see that happening. So I still think this is a tier 3 deck. It loses hard to Searchable Maxi. Searchable Maxi is rough for almost every combo deck, and also the Runick spells are just really tough for a deck like this, which plays so many very specific power engine cards. The next deck is Heroes. Heroes got a slight buff. However, I don't think that changes where Heroes are on the tier list. I think they're probably still like down here with all this stuff. Heroes are interesting. Going first, Heroes are very, very strong because they can establish cards like Dark Law, cards like Plasma, so on and so forth. But does that beat Runick? No, it clearly doesn't. This did get buffed in a sense of like, hey, we got Fusion Destiny back, but also in the sense of Sprite is pushing Nibiru out of the format. So more people are, like, Heroes boards are actually going to not end on a rock. They're going to end on, like, your real end board, which is, competent. But I don't think this deck can go second very well into Runick boards, into Sprite boards. I mean, it can kind of. Like, here, OTKing with Heroes is not the hardest thing to do. But I don't know if it's consistent enough or good enough to be able to play into that matchup, like, well. And it just, like, loses to so many... It just loses... There's so much variance with the deck like this. It loses to so many things that it's hard to rate a hero deck above Rogue, to be honest with you. But anyways, moving on to the next deck, Drytron. I think Drytron is probably right here with, like, Adamancipator, Ignister, Dragon Link. I think all like these different combo decks that are like right here in the middle of tier 3, I think they're interchangeable. I think you can kind of put them in whatever order you feel like. But this is probably like the results in me. Like the results are talking to me a little bit here by saying like, okay, Dragon Link is still getting some results, especially if there's Thunder Dragons being played in it. Like that is a viable option. Like playing some Dragon Link, like TD Dragon Link, like that works. Right, Ignister still getting some results. Drytron, not really, and Adamancipator, really not either. But I still think they're competent. Right, but same things with Adamancipator and all these other ones. It just loses to Maxi, it loses to Runick, just banishing your cards. It's just tough. Like it's just a tough matchup. Exosister, I talked a lot of smack about this deck last time. I put it in Rogue, and honestly, I really want to put it in Rogue again because this deck sucks. This deck is so bad. But is it like, I don't know, is it as bad as Heroes? Like, no, it's definitely not. I'll put it at the bottom of tier 3, just to be like somewhat respectful to Martha. But this deck sucks. Like, this deck's not good at all. It doesn't do anything relevant. It doesn't have any like good matchups. Like, it has fine matchups. Like, it's got some good matchups. But when Sprite is tier 0, no, spoiler alert, Sprite's probably tier 0, by the way, if you didn't already know that. Like this deck, like what does it do? Like against, like what does this do against Sprite? You just lose to Sprite. So, I don't know. Whatever. The next deck is Fluunderies, everybody's favorite birds. I don't know where to rank a deck like this. Like going first, like this deck still is really strong. It's still really, really strong going first. Going second, I think it kind of sucks unless you're building it to go second. So it's kind of tough. but I think it's probably top of tier 3. I think it's probably like slightly worse than Thunder Dragons, maybe a little bit better than Dino, but I don't know. It's Flunder. Like, who cares? The next deck is Invoked, Shaddoll, Dogmatica. There's a lot of URs in this deck. Dismantle them, buy your Sprite cards. Just kidding. This deck's kind of bad. It doesn't really do anything. It's so reliant on a normal summon that it really doesn't. It just doesn't seem worth it to play a deck like this. There's so many better decks out there, and Branded Despia is like the Branded Despia, even Thunder Dragons are like great examples of that. Like, just play like one of these better fusion archetypes than Invoked. It's just a little bit too slow. It doesn't have like, the grind is there, but the grind game is not strong enough to actually compete, I don't think. The next deck is Labyrinth. I updated the picture on this, so yay, cool. This is actually the Labyrinth, the lovely Labyrinth that's in the game, not the other one, the Lady Labyrinth, who's not even in the game yet that I had on there. But anyways, I think Labyrinth is probably a top of tier 3 kind of deck. It's without a doubt the best trap deck in the game, and it's only going to get better from here. It's got the ability to play some of the virus cards. It's got the ability to play all the floodgates. It's got the ability to search floodgates. Normal traps are really, really strong, honestly. It can play first. It can play second. It's without a doubt the best trap deck in the game. And it doesn't even lose that hard to Runick, surprisingly. I mean, because it has the ability to search traps and, get what you need, it's got the ability to play into that matchup fine. I think you potentially could make the argument that this is bottom of tier 2, but I haven't seen the results in tournaments to actually be able to go that far. But I am very high on this deck, and I think it's only going to get better with time. The next deck is Libromancer, discount Drytron. We're just going to put it down here with DDD. This deck is like super cool. Like, Doombroker is such a cool looking art, but that doesn't make the deck good, sadly. So yeah, I think it's down here. It doesn't really do all that much right now. It's just like, I think it's just a worse version of Drytron. Obviously the decks are very different, but I think it just doesn't do enough. Right, like, it's kind of a crappy Scythe deck. Assuming they're actually even going for Scythe and Master Duel. I know they were for TCG in a while, but like, why would you play this over Drytron? That would be my question. And also, like, why would you play this over Adventure Phantom Knights? That's another question. Or Live Twin Sprite, which is also a Scythe deck, which which we're going to talk about now. Live Twin Sprite. This is going to be a I'll put it at tier 1. I'll put this at a tier 1 deck because I think if Runick Sprite and Pure Sprite weren't in the game, for whatever reason, I think this would be the best deck in the game. But those decks are in the game, so this deck's not the best deck in the game. Simple as that. I think it's clearly better than Despia. I think it's clearly better than like Despia, Swordsoul, Adventure Phantom Knights, so on and so forth. But I don't think it's on the same level as Pure or Runick Sprite. And I think you can make the argument that it's just as good as Pure. But I don't know. I don't know if it is. I think the ability to search Maxi so fluently and so easily in Pure, whether it be with the Herald combo or with the Swap Frog combo, just makes it a better all-around deck. And the ability to play cards like, Swap Frog is just an insane card. The Beckoning Bee stuff is really, really good. And it's only going to get better with time. But I don't know. Maybe I'm sleeping on this a little bit. Maybe this is up here in tier 0 with the other Sprite variations I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but it just doesn't seem to be on the same level as Pure Sprite or Runick Sprite. The next deck I want to talk about is Madolche's. I think Madolche is like a solid option. Like, it's not like the worst deck in the world, right? I think it's probably down here with Exosister. I don't think it's a good deck. I don't think it's a bad deck. I would never recommend someone play this, but if you go first with this deck, you can definitely set up some cool stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Like, Madolche's Madolche. So yeah, I'm just going to put it at bottom of tier 3. But I think it's clearly better than these decks down here. The next deck is Marincess. This is clearly just like a worse version of Ignister. And I think it's probably maybe here. I think the combo decks like are a little bit better than this. And it's like a worse version of Ignister. But I think it's still okay. Like, Ignister's just better because, like, Arrival's better than, like, the towers that you can make in Marincess. And you can play the Mathmech cards in Ignister. And Mathmech cards are just, like, really good. Speaking of Mathmech, we got, like, Pure Mathmech. going to put that at tier 2. I think this deck can compete, just like Brand of Despia can, just like Swordsoul can, just like Phantom Knights can. This deck can compete with Sprite. I don't think it wins, but I think it can compete. If you go first with Mathmech and you establish your IP into Appaloosa, whatever you're going to go into with IP, plus your Super Factorial, plus some follow-up, like Runick still has so much like trouble beating that, right? Unless they open called by, unless they open non-engine. So the Mathmech engine is really strong. I don't think it plays second all that well into Runick or into Sprite, but I think it plays good enough into pure Sprite. Not necessarily Runick, because I think Runick kind of dominates it, but I think it plays well enough into pure Sprite that it's still going to be a viable option going forward. And yeah, I don't foresee a situation that Mathmech falls out of the meta because of Sprite. The next deck I want to talk about is the Pendulum Magicians. It seems like this falls into the same. This has got all the same issues as all these other combo decks, but it just takes more combo pieces to do what these decks do, right? Pendulum Magician, it's been buffed a lot, and it continues to do some things in tournaments, but I don't think it does enough for it to consistently be, like, for me to consider it, like, better or on the same level as Adamancipate or Drytron, Dragon Link, so on and so forth. I think it's just a worse combo deck than those. It's probably better than ABC, let's be honest here. Honestly, Exosister is probably better than ABC too, so I'm going to fix that. But not better than VWorld. No. It's not better than VWorld, but I think it's better than ABC. Yeah, okay, this is what we're going to go with. I'm going to clean up. But anyways, moving on to the next deck. We got Punk here. So this is like Pure Punk. I think Pure Punk is... I think I underestimated it in the last video. I think I put it at Rogue, but I think it's a little bit better than that because the ability to search Ghost Ogre is still really good. The ability to draw multiple cards for free each turn is really good. This deck going first can set up a lot of really powerful interruptions. Maybe not a lot of powerful interruptions, but a handful of very, very powerful interruptions. Like, not a lot, but like a few very powerful interruptions. And that's really all you need, right? If you play them right. But more than that, the Punk cards are just so good in so many different decks. We saw in the Master Circuit series this past weekend a Punk Tri-Brigade deck top. That's really cool, right? We can see Punk Dragon Link. That's really cool. You can see Punk Thunder Dragon. That's really cool. You can see Punk Therion, Punk ABC. Like, there's just so many different variations. I'm sorry, I just hit the mic. I hope that wasn't too loud for you guys. You can see so many different variations of Punk that I think you have to respect these cards enough to put them into that tier 3 category. So I'm going to put Pure Punk as just a deck at tier 3. The engine, it's a top tier engine, and it can be splashed in a lot of things, and it can make a lot of different decks better. So, but as a pure deck, I'm going to put it at bottom of tier 3. More respect than I'm giving it from last one, so I think that's probably correct, and I think I was wrong last time. The next deck I want to talk about is Pure Sprite. There's no other place to put this deck than tier 0. If tier 0 exists in this game, if we are in a tier 0 format, and I'm honestly kind of I would be skeptical of someone who's saying we're not. Like, if someone said we're not in a tier 0 format, I would question like what format you've been watching, because it seems like we are. It seems like there's no other way to go than saying, hey, we're in a tier 0 format. Like, Sprite is clearly superior to everything. And I know Sprite is not winning every tournament, but it's dominating the top cut of every tournament. It's dominating the entries of every tournament. It's dominating so many aspects of every single tournament that you can't really say that Sprite as a engine is not tier 0. You might be able to pick apart like specific decks and say that all the Sprite variations are tier 1, like Runick Sprite, Pure Sprite, Evil Twin Sprite, are all different tier 1 decks. But I don't know. I gotta say it's tier 0, and it's kind of unfortunate because you don't want a tier 0 format, at least I don't. But at least there are other things that can compete. So that's all I'll say really about it. The only other thing I'll say actually is Pure Sprite. The reason I'm putting it above Live Twin Sprite is because it just searches Maxi at such efficient levels. Going first, it just searches Maxi so efficiently. And going second, it has a better identity than Live Twin Sprite. which is why I think it's better than Live Twin Sprite, because it's got more of a consistent identity. It knows what it wants to do going second, whereas when I'm playing Live Twin Sprite, I don't exactly know what I want to do. But that might just be a me thing, and you guys might have different experiences, but from my perspective, it seems like this deck just has more of an identity going first and second than Live Twin Sprite does. Moving on to Pure Runick. Guys, honestly, I don't think Pure Runick's very good, and I know it just got nerfed, like, quite a bit, but even before then, I think I was overhyping it. I had it in tier 2 on my last list. I think I was wrong. This deck just straight up loses to the Runick Sprite matchup. Like, it's just a losing matchup. Like, there's just nothing that Runick Stun can do. It just loses that matchup outright. I think I said in another video that it was like 80% win rate probably for Runick Sprite, and I stand by that. I think it's probably at least 80%, if not higher. It should be 100. Like, it should be 100% win rate, but I think there's enough bad players for it not to be 100% win rate. I think there's also just enough variance in like luck of Yu-Gi-Oh to say it's not a 100% matchup. But really, I don't see ever a situation where a good Runick Sprite player should lose to a good Pure Runick player. It just doesn't make any. It just wouldn't. I just don't see that happening. But yeah, and for those reasons, I think, and also for the nerfs, losing a mono down to 1, all the Runick spells getting hit does hurt Pure Runick way more than it hurts like Runick Sprite. So for those reasons, I think this is probably a tier 3 deck. Maybe bottom tier. Maybe it's like starting to slip even from the top of tier 3. Maybe it's lower than this, but I'm still like, if all of a sudden Runick Sprite was out of the game, like, how good would this be? Like, if there was just pure Runick, or not, if there was just pure Runick and pure Sprite and no Runick Sprite, like, how good would pure Runick be? I think it would be a lot better than it is currently. So I think it's probably still top of tier 3, but we'll see with time. The next deck is Salaman. Really great. This deck's really great, honestly. I think this deck is wonderful. I want to put it here. I seriously do. I have no evidence whatsoever. Let me look over here really quickly. Okay, we need to get rid of Emancipator. No one cares about that crap. Okay, yep. And Tournament Filter, Salad. No. Salaman, great. Is there any Salaman? Why is Sprite have... Oh, I know it. It's got freaking All Mirage in it. I was like, what? Like, what is happening? And what do these have? These probably just have, like, the field spell or something, right? Or, like, an All Mirage. I don't know. Anyways, whatever. I'm rambling now. I'm wasting all of our time. I think this deck's really good. I'm not going to put it there. I'm going to put it at top tier 3 because I want to be realistic based on results and what I think is actually going to happen and not what I hope will happen. But, like, Salamangreat, I think it's just as good as pure Mathmech. Like, it's just as good as pure Mathmech. I don't really see a way that Salad is objectively worse than Mathmech. Like, I guess I do, because Circular is, like, broken and way better than Gazelle. But not, like, it's way better than Gazelle, but not, like, okay, it's better than Gazelle, but not way better than Gazelle. I hope that makes sense. Gazelle's, like, a really, really good card, and Gazelle's the OG Circular. Like, that card does so much for you, and going first with Salad, you can still establish a really, really strong inboard. Not as strong as Mathmech, albeit, I'll, admit that. But going second, Salad's way better than Mathmech. And you really can't convince me otherwise. Like, Mathmech does not play into boards like Salad does. So, I think for those reasons, like, you could honestly make the argument that Salad's right here with Mathmech. But results-wise, gotta look at results. Like, theory is one part of the game, results are another. And both need to be taken into account when making a tier list. And taking both into account, I think Salad is objectively not performing as well as the quote-unquote tier 2 decks, right? So, for that reason, I'm going to put it at top of tier 3. But I have a lot of love for Salad. I think this deck could be really great. I think it could truly be Salaman great if people tried it and people gave it the shot it deserves. Moving on to the next deck, Scareclaw. So, I left this off the list last time, but someone in the comment section pointed out that I probably shouldn't have, and I think they're correct with that assessment. I don't know why I left it off, to be honest with you. I thought about adding it, but then I just didn't. And I was like, okay, hindsight 2020, I really should have, because this deck can compete. This deck is a legitimate contender in, like, I'm saying it's a legitimate contender. Like, I'm putting it at tier 3. Tier 3, I think it's objectively, honestly, probably better than ABC, better than Madolche. It might even be better than, like, some of this other stuff here. I'm going to put it here. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to be a little bold. I'm going to say it's a better than Pendulum Magician. Why am I putting Punk so low? I'm really bad at making these tier lists sometimes. Like, what am I doing? Okay, Punk is clearly, like, better. Also, Punk is clearly better than Exosister. Exosister sucks. This deck is terrible. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm changing up. My bad, guys. I think Scareclaw is middle-ish of the pack. Bottom tier 3, middle tier 3, somewhere in that range. Because going first, Tryhard's amazing. Like, it's a floodgate. Like, it's a legitimate floodgate, and it's like an insane, like, it's a crazy good card. And going second, this deck can OTK very well. It's got the ability to play the Tri-Brigade cards, which are phenomenal. It's got the ability to play the Adventure cards, which are phenomenal. It has so much potential overall that I don't think you can really, like, say this deck is not a viable option in the current format. I think it's just as viable as any of the decks listed above it in the tier 3 category. Maybe not, like, the top 4 or 5. But, like, from Dragon Link down to Madolche, I think all of those decks, maybe even, like, lump Flu and Dino in there. From, like, Flunderies to Madolche, I think all those decks, like, are pretty close to each other, and I think you can pick any of them, and, like, if you're good with the deck, you can compete. Now, I think, like, all these decks, like, up here are a little bit better than all this other stuff. So for that reason, I think you could probably put them in tier 2, but I don't think they're as good as these decks. So I should just make more categories. Ah, screw it. Moving on to Shaddolls. Somewhere around here. Who cares? This deck sucks. I'm not Japanese. Not Asian. Or I shouldn't just say Japanese. I'm not Asian. So I can't play Shaddolls very well. This is all, like, the different, like, Chinese, Japanese tournaments that are hosted on Master Duel. Like, there's always, like, the reason I say that is because, like, the reason I just said what I said was because there's always, like, a Chinese, Japanese, Asian tournament that's hosted, and it's put on Master Duel meta, and you see, like, a Shaddoll deck, like, coming in second place, like a 60-card Shaddoll deck that looks like it makes no sense whatsoever, just coming in second place. And in the Bing Wars, the Team Wars, like, my team played in, like, about a month ago, the winning or second place team, either the winning or the second place team, they were I think a Japanese team, and one of their guys played Shaddolls literally every single week and just annihilated everybody. And it's like, okay, how does this happen? Like, I play this deck sometimes, and this deck is not good. Like, it's objectively not a good deck. But, you know, some of these guys they're just built different. But anyways, if you're not one of those guys, this deck sucks. Moving on to Sky Striker. This deck's not doing anything. Like, this deck hasn't done anything with all its buffs, and I was even this deck got more buffed than I even, like, realized in the last tier list video. Like, someone pointed in the comment section below that I was wrong with the amount of nerfs to this deck. Like, that more stuff has been unlimited. Like, I'm pretty sure Kagari is at, like, 2 now. Oh, come on. Yeah, Kagari's at 2, and this deck is still bad. Like, how does that... If Kagari's at 2, and Engage is at 2, Widowhanger's at 3, we have linkage, and this deck is still bad, like how are we going to save this deck? Like, I don't know, whatever. But I think it's right around here. You might be able to make the argument that it's, like, a little bit better than Tryhard, like Scareclaw, Punk, so on and so forth, but I'm not convinced. It doesn't do anything in the actual metagame. Like, it doesn't actually do good in tournaments ever, so... Oh boy, the next deck is everybody's favorite, Runick Sprite. This is, without a doubt, the best deck in the game. Actually, I wouldn't say without a doubt. I would say, like, it's better than Pure Sprite, but it's not, like, that much better than Pure Sprite. I think they're both, like, neck and neck for the best deck spot. But I think more people just play Runick Sprite because it's easier. Well, it's not easier to play, but it looks on the surface better, and it looks like on the surface like it's a better choice and an easier choice to pick as, like, the best deck than Pure Sprite. But Pure Sprite's still, like, that deck's, you know, that deck's putting in some work, not gonna lie. But yeah, there's really not much to say about this deck. It's so toxic. It's incredibly annoying to play against. It's not fun to play. Like, let's be honest here. It just is what it is, and it's everywhere. I was recording I haven't uploaded it yet, I think I'm going to re-record it and just go about it in the context of, like, there's a new ban list. But I was recording the meta report for this past week yesterday, and it was just one after another Runick Sprite list, and they were all the same. And I was like, oh god, this is just so bad. Like, it's like Runick Sprite, Runick Sprite, Runick Sprite, Pure Sprite, yay, Runick Sprite, Runick Sprite, Runick Sprite. And I was just like, oh geez, these tournaments are not fun to play. But anyways, moving on to Spyral. I hyped Spyral up last time. I put it in tier 2. It's not performing like that, guys. It's not performing like that. It's not doing anything. Like, and I don't think it's going to. Like, it's so sad because this deck is really cool, especially if you've never seen it before. It's like Dragon Link. Like, if someone's never seen Dragon Link play, and you watch like a good Dragon Link player, you're like, oh my gosh, this deck's insane. Same with like Adamantipator. Just like with any of these combo decks, you're like, what the heck is happening? But then you see it a few times, and you're like, wait a minute, this deck's doing literally the same thing every single game, just like in different ways. So it's not that exciting, but whatever. Like, that's a different conversation for a different day. But I really thought, with Illusion to Chaos in the game, this was going to do something. But how does it go second into Sprite boards? How does it beat Sprite going second? How does it beat Runick Sprite? Going first, I'll give it to you. This deck's broken going first. But how does it go second? I haven't seen it. Like, I haven't seen it happen. I know it can go second, but I haven't seen it, like, consistently going second. And I also haven't seen it doing anything since Sprite came out in, like, actual tournament play. So, hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully, like, some of these other combo decks, like Spyral, D-Link, so on and so forth, hopefully they'll rise in the coming, like, weeks. But I don't know if I see it happening. The next deck I want to talk about is Swordsoul. I'll put Swordsoul here. I'll say it's slightly better than Mathmech, but slightly worse than Despia. Because I think Despia plays into Sprite better than Swordsoul does. But I think Swordsoul still plays really solid into Sprite. Sprite boards are not, like, oppressive, necessarily. They're very good, and they establish a lot of follow-up and some good interruptions. They're not oppressive. Swordsoul can definitely OTK through those boards. So can Despia. Mathmech, on the other hand, I don't know about that, but that can potentially, but I'm not convinced. Like, it's consistently going to do that. But I think Despia puts up a better turn 1 than Swordsoul does for the matchup, because a Monster Negate or an Omni Negate is definitely not as good as a Mirror Jade Banish or like a Dragos Tapalia changing the level and negating. Protos, on the other hand, Protos is oppressive. Like, Protos is, like, insane going first against Sprite, because a lot of them are darks, right? So there's that. But, you know, you're not going to be getting that. Like, I guess you're not going to be getting that every single game, but you're going to be able to get it a lot going first. But I don't know. Whatever. I'm just going to roll with it. Despia, Swordsoul, neck and neck right there for the second, quote-unquote, second best type of deck in the game, right? Whichever one you want to put at top of tier 2 is fine. I'm just going to put Despia because I like it a little bit more than Swordsoul right now. Next deck is Tri-Brigade, Leerlusk. I mean, I think it's probably, like, right here with all the other combo decks. It's good. I mean, it's definitely good. Like, it actually, you know what? That's totally a lie. It's, like, right here. Like, it's definitely better than the other, like, combo decks. Because this deck can play second way better than the other decks can. I mean, Dragon Link can play fine second, but this deck plays really good going second because it can make Zeus so easily. Just for free, pretty much. Because of that, I think it's got to have more respect on it than, like, a Dragon Link does right now, or a Drytron does, or an Adamantipator. But I still don't think it's, like, that good. Like, I wouldn't play this deck right now, but that's just me. The next deck is Tri-Brigade Sprite. I'm going to put Tri-Sprite here. That might be incorrect, but I don't know. It's tough because this deck's not at full power yet. We're missing Pit Knight early, we're missing Sprend, and obviously all Sprite variations are missing Sprend. But I think, objectively speaking, what Sprite variation gets the best because of Sprend coming into the game is Tri-Sprite. And I think once we get Sprend and once we get Pit Knight, this will be the best Sprite variation. Or at least, like, tied for the best. As opposed to, like, clearly the worst. Like, This is clearly, like, worse than these 3 variations. Like, Live Twin Sprite, I think, is a little bit worse than these 2. These 2 up here are about neck and neck. I think Tri-Sprite is clearly worse, but I think it's clearly better than all these other decks, too. Because if, like, these decks weren't in the game, for whatever reason, if Pure Sprite didn't exist, Live Twin Sprite didn't exist, Runick Sprite didn't exist, Tri-Sprite would be the best deck in the game. I think, clearly, it would be the best deck in the game. So, that's just my take. Also, this deck is so fun. Like, this is the most fun Sprite deck to play. Like, without a doubt. I've been playing it for, like, the past, like, 4 or 5 days, and it's a blast to play. Like, the combos are wild, and they're only going to get better with time. So I love it, but it's not that amazing. The final deck I want to talk about is Water Control, Umi Control, whatever the hell you want to call it. This deck sucks. Alright, guys. Thank you guys so much for... No, I'm just kidding. I'll talk about it for a second, but it's good. It's okay if it goes first, but it's not great because Runick is so popular, because like, there's so much back row removal just in the game right now. Like, in-engine back row removal, in-engine spell trap negate, so on and so forth. And its floodgates are not that oppressive. Like, not nearly as oppressive as, like, other stuff. What am I trying to think of? Like, I think Labyrinth's floodgates are better. I think Colossus is a better floodgate, right? So, I just think that it's okay. It's not a bad option. It's really cheap, which is great. Speaking of cheap, I'm going to do a shameless plug. And watch out in the coming week or so for a new budget, top 10 budget decks for this format video. Because I think that's pretty important, because a lot of these new decks are really expensive. But anyways, that's kind of a plug for that. Anyways, that is going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this video. Let me know in the comment section down below what I got right, what I got wrong, what decks I left off. If you want me to talk about any other decks, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Enjoy this Tier 0 meta. It's been an absolute blast playing it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.